so the name of this article is Teens and Decision Making. And so y'all are kind of around that age where you're either about to be teenagers or you're already teenagers. And if you don't already know, your brains are not fully developed. um, and I mean, I'm like, what people don't know, or what most people don't know, is that even into your 20s and past that, your brain is still developing. Um, so don't take that as like a insult or anything. It's just, you're at that age and your brain is, starting to develop more. So we're going to read a little bit about that. And I'm just going to read through it, and the language in this article, like there's some things that you might not know about, or words that you might not know. So we'll just go over those really quick. So the first word is going to be neurological development. So that just means the way the brain and nervous system grows and gets more mature. Then neurons are just specialized cells in the brain. So they're just cells in your brain. And then electrochemical impulse. So that is a signal that is both electric and chemical. So electrochemical. It's just like a signal in your brain. Neurotransmitters are chemical messengers that help carry the signal in the brain. So like when you are thinking or you're doing something, neurotransmitters are sending messages to other parts of your brain and telling your brain what to do. Then prefrontal cortex, a region of the brain that is important for sizing up risk and thinking ahead. So that's kind of what is most underdeveloped in kids that are y'all's age. So your prefrontal cortex isn't fully developed, and that's pretty much the section of your brain that thinks ahead, thinks about consequences to situations, and stuff like that. And then lastly, oh wait, no, I think we have one more. Next, we have limbic system, is a brain system that plays a central role in emotional response. So limbic system, emotional response. Then neurologist is just someone who studies the brain. So like a scientist, kind of. So let's get on with reading. So, do you ever act before thinking? Have you ever wondered why? Do you worry this might create problems? If you answered yes to any of these questions, read on. So lots of us, lots of us are impulsive people, and even if you don't consider yourself an impulsive person, you can sometimes, carry that characteristic with you. And to be impulsive is pretty much just to act without thinking about the consequences. So, picture this. Your finger is poised on the send button, your eyes scanning an angry email you've dashed off to a friend who has upset you. Some things you've written are a little harsh. In your brain, a little red light goes off, but what the heck, you're steamed and your friend deserves it. You push the button. Whether you're aware or not, rush decisions like this, acting before thinking it through, happen more often in teens than in adults. Recent discoveries in brain science may help explain why this is so. First, a bit on how a brain makes decisions. Decisions don't just happen automatically in your conscious mind. They stem from a series of events in the brain, which happen most instantaneously. This involves a relay system in which different structures made up of specialized cells called neurons talk with each other by way of electrochemical impulses and chemical messengers called neurotransmitters. Information flowing through this decision-making circuit is analyzed in the different structures. Then, the network as a whole puts out a response. This output provides the basis for our behaviors and actions. While this process is basically the same for teens and adults, the devil is in the details. Since the brain is not fully developed until the early 20s, the way in which a teen's decision-making circuit integrates information may put him or her at a higher risk of making decisions the teen could later regret. So next time somebody asks you, why would you do that? Did you even think about the consequences? Just say, hey, I have an excuse. My brain's underdeveloped. I'm a kid. So you have a free excuse. Way to go. Okay, so next section, the teen brain, under construction. Not long ago, scientists thought the human brain was fully mature long before the teen years. While research shows that one's brain reaches its maximum size between ages 12 and 14, depending on whether you were a girl or a boy, it also shows that brain development is far from complete. Regions of the brain continue to mature all the way through a person's early 20s. So, my brain is still developing, y'all. Yes, Miss Sharp's brain is still developing. A key brain region that matures late is the prefrontal cortex, located directly behind your forehead. The prefrontal cortex is very important as a control center for thinking ahead and sizing up risks and rewards. This area is, in fact, the little red light that was trying to warn you about sending that email. Meanwhile, another part of the brain that matures earlier is the limbic system, which plays a central role in emotional responses. So, your limbic system matures earlier than your prefrontal cortex, meaning that you might think a lot more with your emotions rather than thinking logically. So, since the limbic system matures earlier, it is more likely to gain an upper hand in decision making. This relationship between the emotional center and control center helps to explain a teen's inclination to rush decisions. In other words, when teens make choices in emotionally charged situations, those choices are often more weighted in feelings over logic. This is also why teens are more likely to make bad choices, such as using drugs, alcohol, and tobacco, all of which pose a risk of serious health consequences. Most kids don't really plan to use drugs, says Professor Lawrence Steinberg of Temple University, at least not the first time. They are more likely to experiment on the spur of the moment, particularly when influenced by others or peer pressure. Fine-tuning of the brain. Like the rest of the body, the brain needs to mature in order to reach peak performance. This process involves slow changes, strongly influenced by brain activity, that have evolved to fine-tune or optimize how neural impulses flow throughout the brain, allowing it to process information faster and more reliably. Inside the brain, information travels through a network of neurons, which have thread-like fibers called axons and branch-like structures called dendrites. Dendrites bring information into the neurons, while axons take it away and pass it along to the next neuron. Thus, neurons are assembled into circuits where the far end of an axon, its terminal, is positioned close to a dendrite. The small space between the two is called a synapse, where information is exchanged. Throughout childhood and adolescence, the brain is busy fine-tuning itself through two key processes: myelination and synaptic pruning. In myelination, axons wrap themselves in a fatty substance which works like the insulating plastic that surrounds electrical wires. This boosts the brain's efficiency by increasing the speed in which a signal travels down the axon by up to 100 times. In synaptic pruning, synapses not used very often are removed, allowing the brain to redirect precious resources toward more active synapses. This strategic loss of weak synapses shapes the brain and makes it more efficient. This important pruning process molds the brain in response to a person's experiences and activities. This means that teens have the potential, through their choices and the behaviors they engage in, to shape their own brain development, strengthening some circuits and getting rid of others. This makes the type of activities teens are involved in especially important. Skill building activities such as many physical, learning, and creative endeavors not only provide stimulating challenges but can simultaneously build strong brain pathways. When teens learn and repeat appropriate behaviors, they are helping to change their brains and their future. So, pretty much what you're doing now, like in this age where your brain is developing, some of the things that you do are literally shaping the way that your brain is developing. So when you say, I'm just a kid, what I do now doesn't matter, I'll be a different person when I'm an adult. No. Like everything that you're doing right now is shaping your brain and you can't undo those things. Like once your brain is developed, it's developed. Okay, so next section and the last one. Wait a minute. Learning how your brain works can help explain why sometimes you behave like you do. With this knowledge, you can be better equipped to make smart choices. One tip to follow is to take a moment before acting. When making a decision, something as simple as stopping to think can mean the difference between a positive and a negative outcome. By waiting a minute before acting, you allow yourself to consider consequences, weigh harmful outcomes against short term benefits, determine whether peer pressure is making you do something you'd otherwise not do. Get information or advice if you need it.